Welcome to the realm of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Enjoy listening. Mason Foster was on trial on Earth for the murder of an alien. The incident had spiraled into a scandal capable of jeopardizing interplanetary diplomatic relations. Mason claimed self-defense, stating that the alien had attacked him first. However, the evidence suggested otherwise. The alien was an innocent visitor. To avert a full-blown diplomatic crisis with the Galactic Council, the Earth government agreed to surrender Mason to a high-security space prison. This decision was deemed necessary not only to ensure justice, but also to preserve the fragile peace between humanity and alien civilizations. On a brisk morning, Mason was escorted from Earth in a heavily armored spacecraft. Locked in a secure capsule and surrounded by advanced security measures, he watched through a narrow window as Earth grew smaller, replaced by the vast expanse of the cosmos. A mix of fear and curiosity coursed through him. He would be the first human to ever enter a space prison, an unprecedented event that would etch his name into history. But what lay ahead filled him with unease. When Mason arrived at the Galactic Prison, an enormous metallic structure floating in the void, he was quickly processed by the Galactic Prison Command. The prison was infamous, known for housing the universe's most dangerous criminals. Being its first human inmate, Mason was an anomaly, and his presence drew the attention of everyone inside. Before being taken to his cell, the prison warden issued a stern warning. There are no special privileges for humans here. If you want to survive, you'll follow the rules. The alien inmates, each representing different species with unique physical and mental capabilities, viewed Mason with curiosity. They whispered among themselves, speculating about how a human, a frail being by their standards, might endure such a hostile environment. Meanwhile, among the prison staff, Mason's presence stirred a different kind of intrigue. The blue-skinned female guards, who formed part of the high-security enforcement team, found themselves drawn to him. Mason, with his charismatic demeanor and defiant attitude, exuded an air of confidence that didn't go unnoticed. One guard in particular, Pyra, seemed to observe him more than the others. She had an enigmatic allure, with her cobalt skin and sharp, piercing eyes. Mason noticed her occasional lingering gaze and a faint, suppressed smile on her lips whenever their eyes met. Recognizing an opportunity, Mason began studying not only Pyra but also the prison's routines and vulnerabilities. He paid attention to shifts in guard rotations, patrol patterns, and the placement of security systems, filing away every detail that might aid in his escape. Over the following days, Mason began subtly interacting with Pyra. He greeted her with an easy smile during her rounds and made light, harmless comments that coaxed her into brief conversations. Pyra, initially hesitant, found herself lowering her guard. Mason's words carried a warmth and charm that chipped away at her professional facade. She began sharing bits and pieces about herself, her family, her upbringing, and her reasons for taking such a demanding job. As their interactions grew, so did the bond between them. What began as cautious exchanges turned into something deeper, a fragile connection that neither fully acknowledged, but both could feel. Mason played his role carefully, making Pyra feel seen and valued in a way she hadn't experienced before. Beneath his exterior, however, he was calculating every move. He needed her trust, and when he sensed it was strong enough, he decided to make his move. One evening, as they talked in hushed tones outside his cell, Mason finally voiced his request. "Pyra," he said softly, his voice carrying a rare vulnerability, "I can't stay here. This place will destroy me. You're the only one who can help me escape." Pyra stiffened. The weight of his words pressed down on her. "Mason, I can't. If I help you, I'll lose everything, my job, my freedom. They'll lock me up, just like the others. I know the risks," Mason replied gently, "but think about what's waiting for us beyond these walls. A fresh start, a life free from this place." Together, Pyra hesitated, her resolve wavering. Mason spent the next several days carefully nurturing the idea, using every conversation to paint vivid pictures of the life they could have on Earth, free, unburdened, and full of possibilities. Slowly but surely, Pyra's doubts began to crumble. Her growing affection for Mason, combined with her dissatisfaction with her role in the prison, pushed her to a breaking point. Finally, one night, she gave a reluctant nod. "I'll help you," she whispered. "But this has to be perfect. If anything goes wrong, we're both doomed." The plan was meticulous. Pyra identified a night shift where the fewest guards would be on duty and pinpointed a blind spot in the security system where they could slip through undetected. Mason procured makeshift tools from other inmates, bribing and deceiving them to secure what he needed. Pyra arranged for an escape pod to be prepped and waiting in an unmonitored section of the prison hangar. The timing had to be flawless. When the night arrived, Pyra deactivated the security cameras for a brief window, allowing Mason to leave his cell undetected. Together, they moved through the dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Pyra led the way, her heart pounding with every step. Mason followed closely, his mind racing with anticipation. When they reached the hangar, the escape pod stood waiting, its hatch open like a doorway to freedom. "Hurry," Pyra urged, glancing over her shoulder nervously. Mason stepped forward, but paused just before entering the pod. He turned to Pyra, his face unreadable. "Thank you," he said, his tone calm but devoid of the warmth he had shown her before. Before Pyra could respond, Mason lunged into the pod and slammed the hatch shut. The door locked with a hiss, sealing Pyra on the outside. Her eyes widened in shock as she pounded on the glass. "Mason, what are you doing? Open the door." Inside, Mason stared at her with cold detachment. "I'm sorry, Pyra. Everyone has to look out for themselves." He activated the pod's launch sequence. The alarms blared and red lights flooded the hangar as the escape pod shot into the void. Pyra stood frozen, betrayal etched on her face. Within moments, guards swarmed the hangar, weapons drawn. They apprehended Pyra without hesitation. Security footage showing her assisting Mason sealed her fate. Stripped of her rank and dignity, Pyra was sentenced to serve time in the very prison she had once guarded. Her name became synonymous with disgrace and betrayal. Among the guards and inmates alike, she became a cautionary tale, a symbol of what could happen when personal feelings overpowered duty. Pyra, once respected and feared, now faced the brutal reality of life as an inmate. Her cell was small and stark, a cold reminder of her fall from grace. The routines she had once enforced as a guard now dictated her existence. She woke to the blaring alarms, stood in line for the bland, tasteless meals, and endured the ever-watchful eyes of the guards who now treated her with the same disdain she had once reserved for prisoners. At first, Pyra was determined to keep her head down and survive, but the whispers followed her wherever she went. The other inmates, many of whom she had personally restrained or disciplined, saw her as both a curiosity and a target. "That's her," one inmate muttered to another, loud enough for Pyra to hear. "The one who fell for the human." She thought he loved her, another sneered, her laughter echoing in the hall. Pyra tried to ignore them, but the words cut deep. She hated how easily Mason's name could bring a flush of shame to her cheeks. She hated herself for trusting him, and most of all, she hated that even now, a small part of her wanted to understand why he had betrayed her. Days turned into weeks, and Pyra adapted to her new reality. She learned which inmates to avoid, which guards could be reasoned with, and how to navigate the unspoken rules of prison life. But her nights were the hardest. Alone in her cell, the memories of her time with Mason replayed in her mind. She thought of his smile, his words, the way he had made her feel seen and valued in a way no one else ever had. She wanted to hate him completely, but the pain of betrayal was tangled with the echoes of something that had once felt real. One night, as she lay on the thin cot, staring at the ceiling, Pyra heard movement outside her cell. She tensed, expecting trouble. But when the door slid open, it wasn't an inmate or a guard. It was Zyker, one of the prison's most notorious criminals. A towering figure with forearms and scarred, leathery skin, Zyker had ruled the prison's underground network for years. Well, Zyker rumbled, his voice dripping with mockery. The famous Pyra, or should I say, the infamous ones? Pyra sat up, her muscles coiled with tension. "What do you want?" Zyker's mouth twisted into a grin. Relax. I'm not here to hurt you. In fact, I think you and I could be useful to each other. Pyra narrowed her eyes. I don't make deals with criminals. Funny, Zyker said, leaning against the doorframe. I heard you already did. A human, wasn't it? Foster, I believe. You helped him escape. And look where that got you. The mention of Mason's name sent a jolt through Pyra. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. Get to the point. Zyker chuckled. The point, dear Pyra, is that you're in a unique position. You know this prison better than anyone else. You know the guards, the systems, the protocols. That kind of knowledge is valuable. And I happen to be in the market for someone with your expertise. Pyra's jaw tightened. And what do you want me to do? Help you escape? Zyker shrugged. Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply want to ensure that when I make my move, you're on my side. Think about it, Pyra. Alone, you're just another inmate. But with me, you could have protection, power, maybe even a shot at redemption. Pyra stared at him, her mind racing. She knew better than to trust Zyker, but his words planted a seed of possibility. If she aligned herself with him, she might gain the resources and leverage she needed to survive, or even find a way out of this hell. I'll think about it, she said finally. Zyker's grin widened. That's all I ask. Take your time, Pyra, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't come often. As Zyker disappeared into the shadows, Pyra leaned back against the wall, her thoughts churning. She didn't trust him, but he was right about one thing. She couldn't survive this place on her own, and if there was even the slightest chance of reclaiming her freedom, she had to consider every option. But freedom wasn't the only thing on her mind. As much as she hated to admit it, she wanted answers. She wanted to know where Mason was, what he was doing, and whether he ever thought about the woman he had betrayed. Part of her wanted revenge, but another part, a quieter, more vulnerable part, wanted closure. Over the weeks that followed, Pyra began to carve out a new role for herself in the prison. She formed alliances, traded favors, and slowly rebuilt her reputation, not as a fallen guard, but as a survivor. Zyker's network proved useful, though Pyra remained wary of his true intentions. She worked her way into his inner circle, gathering information and resources while keeping her ultimate goals to herself. And through it all, the memory of Mason lingered like a ghost, fueling her determination. She didn't know what she would do if she ever saw him again, but she knew one thing for certain: she would be ready